Welcome back, everybody, to my continued trek through Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation, Volume 3, not 2. I'm going to make that joke every single time, don't worry about it. But anyways, we have just ended with the Chapter 7 of the third volume with the last video, where we just got them introducing themselves as dead ends in the Adventure Guild and being made fun of, everybody laughing at them and all that kind of stuff. But without further ado, let's jump right into Chapter 8 and onward. After not grabbing any jobs and leaving the Adventure Guild, obviously he's questioning, why didn't we grab any jobs? He's like, don't worry about it, we'll get them later. Let's go get some rest. He's obviously tired, everybody's tired, and they're going to have to get some rest for the next day. This is where we get a little bit more insight into the layout of this town itself. It does seem like there's a lot of emphasis put on these lights that are casting down from the walls of this big crater that surrounds it, or it's within. Ruijerd says that these are illuminators. These are magic stones that absorb light, and then when it gets dark, they emit the light itself. And they say that how much light it can actually pick up can kind of last halfway through the night itself. So it's sort of something that will light up until it's way late, and then it'll turn off. And it seems odd that these things are kind of valuable, yet they're just sitting there on the walls of this crater. Like, why doesn't anybody go get them? Apparently, a long time ago, it was restricted. Like, you couldn't touch those things. The Empress Kishiriku actually had them placed there and all set up to point towards her wonderful castle in the middle, which is now ruins, obviously. And obviously, it's kind of a hassle. I mean, it would take a lot of skill to go up there, climb up this massive wall to get these stones. So everybody kind of just leaves them there. And that's where we get a comment, passing comment by Ruijerd that he really wants to meet this Empress Kishiriku and thinks that she would be like the sexy succubus type, which, yes, technically plays out when they do finally meet her. Just the stature's quite shorter. Yeah, and despite Eris wanting to actually go see the castle after talking about this, he kind of tells her, no, look, I want to get some rest, I'm tired, I'm not feeling well. And this kind of raises a little concern with Eris, which he does note is kind of nice that she's come a long way for this. That's when we go to the inn and we get to meet the Tokurabu Village Toughs. Yes, those guys. Pretty much similar to how it played out in the anime, but one distinct difference. She kicked the crap out of all of them. She beat the crap out of all of them. Yes, technically in the anime, very similar layout. They come in there. These three adventurers, part of this Village Toughs, one of them calls out to Eris and is like, "Hey, man, you want to join our party? We're adventurers too. You're a adventurer, right?" And she ignores, obviously, because she doesn't understand demon tongue. Eventually, she does her hump thing and walks by them. That's when the boy with the horns reaches out and grabs her, pulls and rips the cloak that she got from Ruijerd. She freaks out, punches the guy. The guy slams into the other two boys up against the wall. Then she goes up there and keeps stepping on them. The novel, the novel is a little bit different. Plays out the same way initially. Ruijerd the entire time is noting like, "Oh, good girl, giving them the cold shoulder. That's my girl." She eventually walks by them. They grab, tug. It rips the actual neck of the row, whereas in the anime it just breaks a button. Rips the actual neck of it. She freaks out. This is the first gift that I ever got from Ruijerd. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was that she punched the first one, the guy that pulled her neck and ripped it. He falls. Then I think she roundhouse kicks the second guy, knocks him out. The third guy goes to draw his sword, and she knocks him down. And then she proceeds to go up to them. This is where it gets a little more crazy. And claims that she's going to smash them, those things, in between the legs until they're mush. And she holds up his leg and goes to step on him. And that's when Ruijerd finally kind of steps in and stops him. Yeah, she was going to pound his groin into nothing. It was funny is that Ruijerd finally stops her, pulls her back, says, "Don't worry about it. I'll fix it. There's no point in doing all this stuff." He's feeling a little good about it. Like she's this mad about something that he bought her. But then he goes to take her to Ruijerd. Like he wants Ruijerd to look after her for a second. And Ruijerd's smiling. Like, Ruijerd's happy what he's seeing. Like, it doesn't specifically say, like, he's happy because he's seen, Eris beat the crap out of these guys. Or if it's more of a fact that he sees these guys as villains, obviously. And so he's perfectly fine with watching Eris beat them to nothingness. He'd probably be fine with the fact that she would kill them. But yeah, that's when they introduced the three of them, Kurt, Bashiro, and Goblin. And the three of them are the Tokurabu Village Toughs. Not so tough. Yeah, he offers to bring them into the group, and he's like, "No, that guy over there, Ruijerd, we're a part of him, and we're doing our own thing, so sorry." And it's pretty cool, because after this, they go back and they retire in the inn. I think the only thing we really covered in the anime was that at some point, Ruijerd wakes up, he notices that Eris is very uncomfortable, she's obviously very insecure, despite the fact that she's always putting on this brave face, she's actually concerned. Like, she's wondering if what's happened to everybody back home. She wants to go home. She's wondering if she can make it home. So this is the point where you get that little bit of insecurity in her. But I like technically in the novel, just before this, before he goes to sleep, he is pondering on a lot of things. This is a kind of a growth point for Ruijerd as a character, as he's realizing now that he's in this other world and he's having to support Eris and Ruijerd and their travels. He's having to, for the first time in his entire life, learn how to manage money. And not just that, but he's also kind of balancing the promise he made to Ruijerd. He says if we go and just do jobs, yes, we'll be able to spread the word of Ruijerd and Ch8 and how great they are. But it's going to take so long to make money that way, we're not going to have a place to stay anymore. We're going to run out of money really quickly because these jobs give you pennies. There's a possibility of making more money if we go and just hunt monsters, get the pelts, and sell them to the guild, but then we'll never rank up and we'll never get the word out that the Ch8 are great. I mean, besides maybe going to the vendor and selling the pelts and saying how great Ruijerd is. So he is seen in conflict here. He's having to manage what his promise was, making them to where they have a place to stay, having food to eat, but additionally, their end goal, which is to get out of this whole situation. He's learning to manage his own money. And this is something that, yes, he's never had to deal with before. Every other time when he was back in his previous world, all he had to do was pound the ground for a little bit, and he got what he wanted. And yes, technically living with Zenith and Paul, he probably got everything he wanted then too, except for extra money to get Sylphie into school. Upon falling asleep, yes, he does end up meeting with the man god again. The man god pretty much just tells him to go get that job to find the cat, and that's pretty much all he tells him. It was funny, again, he technically does mention the idea that although the man god believes that he helped him by telling him to accept Ruijerd's help, he's like, Ruijerd would help me anyways. Like, he would have hidden in the distance and helped us anyways. But yes, after waking up, he does have this brief moment with Eris, which is super sweet. It was probably easily one of my favorite scenes in the anime, and additionally was equally as awesome in the novel itself. Again, seeing Eris, her insecurity that she's been hiding this entire time. Yes, it does get a little into his little buddy that was acting up as she's sitting there all defenseless. Again, still noting the fact that he's a scumbag and that he couldn't take advantage of her. But it is cute noting this other side of Eris that he's now seeing. He's talking about that he now understands why Ch8 spoils her so much. Seeing this meek side of her is definitely something you'd want to spoil. He does also technically reflect on what possibly could have happened to Ch8 at this point, knowing the fact that the entire Fatoa region was pretty much covered by this flash of light. And to his detriment later, obviously. At this point, realizing there's no point in even thinking about this right now, that he needs to focus on just getting them home. It was really cool because following this, he does note that Ruijerd was watching them. Like, he's like, man, I'm glad I didn't do anything because Ruijerd's right there. But he does technically give Ruijerd a lot of credit for not being like Paul. And he's like, Paul would have totally teased me about this whole situation, but Ruijerd's keeping quiet. But again, similar to the previous statement, noting at this point that it would probably be a good idea that he sent a letter to Paul, but he just doesn't believe that it would ever reach him anyways. Again, something that later on will probably be like, you should have done it then. Moving on to chapter 9, we get our first job at the Adventure Guild. And yes, this is to find this cat that's missing. But unlike the anime, we do get the whole interaction with the actual owner herself. And this again goes into their whole plan for improving the name of the Ch8. They arrive at this one house and this very young girl comes out. She's obviously very afraid about what's in front of her. There's a big, huge, tall guy with a scar on his face. Ruijerd is trying to act like a cheap salesman from his previous life, acting all polite, calling her madam and everything like that. They do these poses to say that they're going to find this cat that you're looking for, and even Ruijerd goes up there and pats her on the head, despite their being a little bit afraid about... They just mentioned they're dead end. But this guy's really nice, and he's patting him in the head, so she really likes it. She blushes. It was a really cute scene to kind of get their idea of what they're looking for, at the same time saying how they present themselves to each of their jobs they do. But here was an interesting kind of passing statement that happens following the scene. Ruijerd is making these very inappropriate comments about how that girl was literally putty in your hands. You probably could have ran away with her and she'd be perfectly fine with it. She was super cute, obviously very adorable girl, and she was putty in your hands. She was blushing and everything, Ruijerd. And he's nudging Ruijerd, and Eris doesn't like this. And it didn't dawn on me until it started talking a little more. I'm like, okay, yes, he's being a perv, I guess. Maybe that's what's making Eris mad. No, Ruijerd at some point realizes, no, she's mad because we just talked about kidnapping a kid, and what is like one of the most traumatizing experiences that Eris has had in her life. Yes, the whole plan that he had when he first met Eris having them get kidnapped. And so all that Eris can think of is this poor young girl getting the crap beat out of her just like she did in that prison cell. He even knows the idea that, yes, technically ever since that situation, every time they've walked past anybody that's like dressed like a thug, Eris always grimaces at him. Now that we have some information on the cat they're looking for, Ruijerd takes the lead. They go looking around for different places. They see a bunch of paw tracks. He's noting all this information about some cats coming in and taking over their territory and then following the path everywhere, all the way down to like the middle of nowhere, this kind of shady part of the town itself, the slums, and eventually, yes, arriving at the underground building that they eventually find this cat in. And yes, this part is a little bit different than the anime in the idea that, yes, when they arrive in there, they find the cat. Eris is supposed to be watching their tail, let him know if anybody is actually coming into the building. They note the cat they're looking for, realizing it's much bigger than she was playing it out to be. And yes, technically, this is the point in which the 3 P hunters, they call them later on, the pet kidnappers, arrive at the location. Interestingly enough, it doesn't really explain how they defeat these 3 guys in the novel. There's one up you get in the anime. They actually show them fighting them, but yeah, in the novel, it just like quickly cuts to now the 3 of them are on the wall, chained up, and they are gagged as well. And through this interaction, we eventually find out that yes, these 3 people were going out kidnapping pets, waiting until a reward was posted with the Adventure Guild, taking on that job, coming back to their base, grabbing the pet they captured and taking them back to their homes. So they're making money that way. And they mentioned the idea that selling them would be more difficult because they could end up getting caught that way. So this is like a very safe way for them to make a lot of money. And yes, technically they could have ranked up, but they never did because they wanted to remain at the level of rank that you need to get these missing pet jobs. But no, the actual blow up with Ruijerd, I think, was the part that's significantly different in this whole situation because yes, he does ungag one of them. That guy pretty much kicks Rudius, knocks him back. Ruijerd comes up and kills the guy. And yes, obviously, very shocking. Why'd you kill this dude? He's like, because he kicked a child. And even at this point, he does get very frustrated about the fact that Ruijerd was so willing to kill this guy just because he kicked me. You're never going to repair the name of the Superds if you just kill people. Well, he's a bad guy. Yeah, but even still, you still create fear upon the name of the Superds. Even if you killed nothing but bad guys, you're still seen as this threat. You're still seen as this destructive force. But it's interesting because it does kind of emphasize very heavily on the idea that Rudius doesn't even know what to say. Like, he doesn't know what to tell Ruijerd. Like, I have no logic for him. How do I convince him he needs to stop killing people? But not only that, but he's realizing right now that he's terrified. He doesn't realize why he's terrified. That's right, I'm terrified of Ruijerd. This is like the first moment where, despite the fact of this entire journey, despite the fact that his first impressions of Ruijerd, he was a little bit hesitant, he was a little bit afraid of Ruijerd, but he quickly established a bond. And he quickly realized that Ruijerd was a good guy that was obsessed with helping and protecting children. And now this is the first time where he's seen him so quickly and so easily, without hesitation, without any remorse, kill somebody, and this strikes fear upon Rudius. He's both terrified of this guy in front of him, but at the same time unable to find the words to explain to Ruijerd why it's a bad idea that he harms or kills even villains. He even states this is exactly what Roxy warned me of. This short temper that so quickly he can snap and kill somebody. He even thinks about, what is a day that I will finally myself trigger an outburst from him and he'll kill me. He knows that things are so much different culture-wise between humans and demons themselves that it makes sense that there'll become a time where he might trigger some sort of outburst from Ruijerd. Again, he honestly does believe that this entire time, Superds were misunderstood. Like, he found out, oh yeah, despite the fact of all what people are saying about Superds, I met a real one, and he's a good person. This is a kind-hearted guy that's been taking care of me. So obviously they're just misunderstood. But now again, he's realizing, no, that's all normal. Like, killing is a normal everyday thing for this guy. But I think what he ultimately comes to a conclusion of is trying to insinuate upon Ruijerd that if you ever want to improve the image of the Superbs, you cannot keep doing this. Despite the fact that you're going to hold off from killing villains, it shows that you have a rational side, that you do understand that killing is wrong. But then it kind of stops at this point. Like, it kind of sidesteps this conversation. And what happens is, now that you have, yes, this one guy's dead, you end up having them decide to separate the 2 remaining guys, or the girl and the guy. He ends up pulling the lizard guy into a separate room, and he's in there with Ruijerd, and he leaves Eris behind with the female. And he starts interrogating this guy. And eventually this is where we get the whole explanation about what they're doing, how they're kidnapping and turning in things. But he also finds out that this guy that they killed, yes, they're panicked because this is a Ch8. That's why they're in shock. That's why they're in fear. There's a Ch8 right here, and he just took out this guy in one blow. And yes, technically Ruijerd is using that for his advantage to get information out of this guy. But technically, they're happy this guy's gone. Like, that's the funny thing is they're happy this guy's dead. Because I think his name was Roman. This other guy that Ruijerd killed was forcing them. Like, he found out what they were doing, and he's been blackmailing them to give him a cut of it, like a huge portion cut of what they're making. And he's also technically sleeping with the female, despite the fact that she doesn't want to. So she's even more happier this dude's dead. So that was kind of a funny, interesting insight. Jalil and Visquel, these two didn't like this guy. But yeah, this is when Ruijerd kind of thinks of this whole plan. He's like, I'm going to have you guys rank up, get higher rank guild quests, give those to us. We will get you lower rank quests that you will then go and do yourself. And then we will trade and do a reward afterwards. And I'll even pay you some extra for it. And this is a part in the anime that I loved, and I equally loved it in the novel as well. As obviously, he's really mad that Ruijerd is doing this. He doesn't want to work for a bunch of criminals. Eris is telling him to let go of Ruijerd. She's talking about how smart Ruijerd is. He's doing it for both of them. And if you're so mad about this criminal having kicked a child, I kick children all the time, so are you going to kill me too? But equally, yes, leave him alone. We will go on our own. We don't need you anyways. And I think that's just enough to kind of give Ruijerd a sense of reality. Like, this isn't that important. My priority is kind of with these two. Snapping him out of that kind of bloodlust to exact his own justice upon these two people. But once this agreement's made, the three of them leave the place. They go and they turn in the cat to the owner. This is where we get that description of how they show proof they completed the quest. They have those little cards and they're able to say they're completed. It was funny because the girl hands them the card and it's already completed. And then she describes how it's made complete. And so they put their finger on it and say that's completed. And so Ruijerd is like, wait, but you didn't have to do that for this card. And she's like, well, I already knew that you were going to do it. The moment that it basically Ruijerd had charmed her so much, and she knew for a fact this guy was going to find my cat, that she decided to immediately say that it was completed. Like, she knew he was going to come back with her cat. It was so cute. But yeah, then they arrive back at the guild. They turn in their quest, and then Nokopara kind of makes fun of him some more, mentions the idea that, oh, you found that cat because you used that third eye of yours. It wasn't just for decoration, and then ends up introducing himself as Nokopara, rank C adventurer. And that's the end of chapter 10. But I think I'm going to leave it at that. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure to hit that like button down below. Comment, let me know what you thought of this bit of chapters. I think the last one should be my last video unless something crazy happens and it takes a lot of explanation and conversation. But we'll see as it comes along. I hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, subscribe to the channel if you've not already. Share this video if you can. Support us on Patreon or throw a tips link in the description below. We definitely appreciate it, but it does. And y'all take care.